This was the Great War. This was the war to end all wars. And these guys were fairly convinced at the time that there would be no more wars, and if there was one, we were going to it. But the soldiers from the Second World War came home saying no more Hitlers.
That's the difference.
And it redeemed the idea of war. So, anyway. However, not that everybody got off as lightly as Australia. A little place called Latvia, population of less than 2 million, lost 11.7% of their population. Lithuania lost 14.3% of their population. Poland lost just under 17%. Dead. Think about that. So in the First World War, sorry.
Is that all in fighting, or did that include the
I'm only talking, well, this does include soldiers and civilians, and you can get the breakdown, but it's kind of guesswork a bit.
I think 6 million.
In the Second World War? Yeah, just under 6 million. They say 5,820,000, but we'll take 6 million, which is just under.
Don't joke about it, that's not funny.
No, it's not funny, but I'm saying I'm about the statistics of life and about the accuracy of the statistic, not the deaths. So, just under 17% of that country dead, not injured, dead. So in all, in the First World War, we're talking 22 million people dead. In the Second World War, we're talking somewhere north of 60 million people dead. We're talking Russia. Russia was well over, it was like 23, 24 million people dead. Think about that for a minute. No wonder the Germans were happy to run into the arms of the Yanks or take themselves out, because what had just been inflicted upon Russia is worse than any nightmare you will ever dream up. 23 million people dead. As a percentage, that is approximately 13%. 13% of the population dead, to say nothing of the injuries. 10% of the German population lost in the Second World War. One last statistic, because I know it's not exciting. Academics dispute a little bit some of these figures, but so you just take it from my word, it's approximately right. So the number of Jews lost in the Second World War is more or less 78%. So out of a potential 7.3 million Jews, 5.7 million dead. So roughly 78% of all living Jews are gone. Think about that for a minute.
All living or all under in Europe?
All around.
Most of it.
Yeah.
Most of it's lived in Europe.
Yeah, that's right. So, the reason I tell you that is that you cannot minimise the effect of those wars on the history of philosophy. Because what happened to us, and philosophers tend to be Jewish. Most philosophers, a lot of philosophers are Jewish. Where philosophy went after the Second World War was, what can be said after the Holocaust? Actually, where theology went was, what can you say about God after the Holocaust? But philosophy was, what can be said after that? So there was a loss of confidence in science, because science delivered to us the Holocaust in a way. This was done in an orderly, bureaucratic way. I don't know if you've seen too many movies and you see salivating evil people, inflicting this Holocaust, but the truth is it was all done in a very orderly way. And most of the people who perpetrated this were insurance salesmen, banks, clerks, and just ordinary people who did a bureaucratic job. It was my job to check how many pairs of glasses came off these people, and you end up with this big pile of glasses, and this was done in an orderly way. Science gave to us the atom bomb, and so in philosophy, there's a move away from the optimism that came with modernity. With modernity, reason was going to lead the way, and science was going to deliver the new world. Well, after the wars, we're not so excited about what science can give you. Yeah.
An observation and a question.
Fire away.
The observation and question is that the worst persecutors known for the Smoto Inferno, which is another word for extended family, were Christians, especially Catholics.
Yeah.
The worst persecutors
Yes.
were Christians.
Persecutors where?
I'm talking about the German Holocaust.
Oh, okay.
It was actually, as far as I know, a Christian device, but especially in Eastern Europe, it was Catholics who were far worse. Anybody else who wants to say something? But certainly the Holocaust was run by National Socialism, but it was a Christian device.
Well, I've been saying things that are too simplistic for 4 weeks, and I think that's probably a bit simplistic as well. There's no doubt.
All the governments who had deportations, they were formally democratic, but they were Christian.
Yeah, of course.
All
That's
closely
true.
Catholic affiliated.
Yes, because most of the world was.
Yeah.
So
doesn't that tell us something about the way the world is?
was. I think that what happened, if you don't mind me saying so, post-modernity, which is where we're supposed to be, what post-modernity means is the end of every entity and every ism. And big doubts about embryology. So the world does not buy anymore Christianity, or all the isms are all under huge threat. I don't know if you've noticed this, but communism isn't exactly thriving. Feminism is in grave danger of being lost. Every ism, every entity, we're losing faith in any story that wants to explain the world. And in philosophy terms, this is the death of the meta-narrative. A meta-narrative is just a human construction that says, I can explain the world. So anybody who, and look, you can reject this if you like, I don't really mind. It's not like we're, it's not like it matters that much. But I can tell you that post-modernity is in the oxygen we breathe. You are affected by this, whether you know it or not. There is in our society, there is in the culture in which we live, a profound scepticism about any meta-narrative, about anybody who has any explanation for anything.
Except the disorder.
Sorry?
Except the disorder. Everything's attributed to a disorder now rather than...
Well, we have medicalised everything in the wide world. We'll lose that as well in due course. That is relevant, actually. We might get to it in a minute. So every entity, every ism is struggling. Anybody who comes up with says, we've got this meta-narrative to help you make sense of the world is struggling. And what we've been left with is this modern sense of I'll make up my own story.
Everyone's a philosopher.
Everyone is a philosopher, actually. Gaz out the front does philosophy, and my old supervisor does philosophy, and it's both philosophy, but it's pretty hard to recognise the difference. But everybody is autonomous. Everybody's a law unto themselves. The danger of this, by the way, the danger of the atmosphere we breathe in, is that there's a loss of confidence in in the logos, in the word, in reason itself. There's a loss of confidence in reason itself. So where does that take you? It takes you to the point where nobody can really know everything for sure very well. And the danger of that is that the loudest voice wins.
That's the scariest thing, I think, at the moment on this planet.
It's everywhere. It's in any organisation you like. When I was a kid in churches, they used to have these annual conferences, which were shit fights on a massive scale, where people would fight over the smallest little bit of theology or how to interpret something or how to order church business and all of that. And all of that's gone because nobody has this sense of that you can know this stuff anymore. And so these conferences have been all blown away, and now we all have conventions where everybody's happy and nobody disagrees with anybody, and you have a convention speaker, but there is no ground on which you can possibly kind of engage in a way that might generate heat in the way that used to happen. Now, it's just the way it's gone, and I'm not saying let's turn the clock back. I'm just saying that's what's happened. And so those sort of events that used to be a wrestle between equals are now managed by managers, and now that everybody's a law unto themselves, what you get, what we're selling, and what most people want isn't a wrestle about truth. What most people want is an experience that's rewarding. Where does experience happen? It happens, in the individual. That's everybody wants a good experience. Well, that's modernity.
You're missing a group experience, though, bro. You're missing a group experience.
That's right. That's right. I'm only talking in very, very general terms.
Ironically, there's quite a degree, there's such a superficiality to it. I remember about 2 years ago there was that thing where Tony Abbott was showing a video of himself talking to the guy in Iraq, and sort of said, and the American soldier in Iraq was saying, we've lost all these people that got blown up. And Tony Abbott sort of said, well, sometimes shit just happens, doesn't it? And the Channel 7 journo presented him with this. It was like, what have you got to say for yourself? And Tony Abbott just stood there and said nothing for like minutes. And I remember I was talking about it with my boss at work, and we were talking about politics, and he said, you're too young to remember this, but 20 years ago he would have just punched the guy.
Yeah.
And you can't do that now.
That's true.
Because there's this superficial crap of if you do something like this, we're in this time where kind of anything goes, but at the same time, if you step outside the expected social norms, you get totally contradicts on social media, and like in a way that's good because there's a lot of consumer-driven change of corporate behaviour that's coming out of that. But at the same time, there's this ridiculous 30-second soundbite political debate that's not a debate at all. It's just rubbish. It's all stage managed, like you say. And so there's this sort of it's like there is this it's open slather, but it's totally not at the same time.
Yeah, that's right. And the distinction between spin and not spin is very grey.
Yes.
And that's not just politics, let me tell you. That's everywhere. Yeah.
It's also, I'm struggling with you saying it's the end of anything isn't all the overriding the meta view, because at the same time, I think what I think I see is that everybody's grasping for the easy answer, the Anthony Robbins kind of answer.
I'm totally with you. Yep. Look, every time I say something, every time I make a claim like that, there's always the opposites. There's always the reactions. And what happens is, with the end of every anti-ismology, is you get this sea of grey. And so people don't do well in a sea of grey, so they all jump for something that will give certainty. And so you get fundamentalism of every kind. You get Muslim fundamentalism, Christian fundamentalism, science fundamentalism, and they're bloody well everywhere. Nobody saw who I was crossing swords with before. You did. Well, that's okay for you. There's this guy who's a fundamentalist scientist, and he gets a little bit cranky with me, and which is one of the services I offer. He just wanted to nail me, and I happen to know he's married to a really nice person, and I said, so what about your love for your wife? How do you explain that? And he said, bacteria. He's absolutely serious, and that is scientific fundamentalism. That's everything can be explained, and it's all about bacteria, and it's all physical, and so there is there's fundamentalist empiricism, there's fundamentalist rationalism, there's fundamentalist Christianity, and in a way that is the reaction to what happens when you get the death of all these other things. So
Graham, what about the idea, I just finished reading a book by Kevin Wolf of Blindness, and she talks about, the silencing of the truth sayers, and, the whole Cassandra piece, and I go, because all I do is go, I upset a lot of people. I actually do it for a living.
Yeah.
I upset them.
You also offer that service, yeah. When I was talking earlier about Wayside being an IC rather than an ICU, we also, it's part of our job to disappoint people. Because, I used to bribe my children, I think I said this a couple of weeks ago, I used to bribe my children all the time, so I'm not probably a model father. But I came home one day with nothing because I'd been flat out, and my son's rifling through all my pockets looking for today's lolly. And I said to him, sweetheart, Dad hasn't got a lolly today. I've just been so busy. And he threw the biggest fit you ever saw in your life. I said, all I've got's love today. I haven't got any lollies. Well, we can laugh, but that's kind of the world. We're pursuing lollies, like as if that matters. It's love that matters. I don't know what else I was going to say about this stuff.
I saw a great picture the other day about a bunch of Brokey supporters, but this is just if only people get this excited about stuff that matters.
That's true. My theory is, and it's just me, but my theory is that the more these things die, the more important entertainment becomes, and the more important entertainers become. We worship them because we're filling in the time. All right. So, in other words, I think philosophy has dug itself into a hole. For good reason. I think postmodernity probably had to come from this. This has its seeds of its own destruction in it. And in a way we would have got to this maybe without the wars, which has taken us a lot longer. So postmodernity does have a contribution. Foucault, I haven't talked about any of these guys. Foucault says that the history is always told by the victim. The story is always told by the one who's exercising power. Now that's true, actually. And so his contribution is every time you read history, what you need to do is hear what hasn't been said, and then bring what hasn't been said into the story, and you'll cancel out the story that has been said. So what you end up with is more and more and more mess until eventually you haven't got a story. But he's right. He's right. Derrida is the guy who talked about deconstruction. He's awfully affected by Hegel, and he writes about Hegel all the time. But you probably don't remember, last week Hegel was the one that said society develops a hypothesis, and from that breaks out antithesis, and from that comes a synthesis. Well, Derrida says you don't want the synthesis. That's not good. What you need to do is just make it more and more muddy. And the job of philosophy, from Derrida, French character, a lot of these guys are French. The philosophy is done when you deconstruct whatever it is. Not to construct something else, you deconstruct whatever it is. And there are, look, I've read a few master's theses in the last year, and a couple of PhD theses for people where I'm just helping friends, put their work together. And they nearly all carry a strong theme of they're deconstructing something. That's their work. Their job is to deconstruct something. So it carries this idea that that's the job of philosophy, is just to undo all this damage that's been done. Can you see how this is born out of and grows out of modernity? It grows out of the wars. And so that's the spot we're in. The only problem with that is in the old ancient Greek sense... That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Which is why you need entertainment. Because there's no meaning.
Or community.
That's right. Community is lost. Meaning is lost. And that is the world we're in. And that is the dangers we face.
But there's really anything that too will pass.
Yes, it will. So I don't know what's coming next. I think it would be interesting if the world economy collapses. I don't mean interesting as in, let's wait and see what happens, but it doesn't take a big shake to make the world change course. And if whether we like to admit this or not, we do spend 90% of our time worrying about what carries about 10% of the value in life. And it doesn't take a lot to shake that. It's an illusion. I often say to people, you should do my job for a few weeks. Because I do a funeral every week. Well, I haven't this year, but I had last year, a funeral every week, 50 odd funerals. And what every funeral has in common is the absolute shock that somebody could have died. And it might be grandma who's 90 and has been sick as a dog for 3 years, and we can't believe she's died. Or it might be a kid who's 15 and overdosed and died. And we live in an illusion that we will never die. And we spend our money and we invest in super and we do all the things we're going to do like as if this is going to go on for a long time. And you've only got today. That's the truth of the matter. You do not have tomorrow. So you should do my job, because you can see these illusions snap in a minute. And people don't like the day of the funeral because that's the day when the illusion is actually shattered. And if this girl at 26 could die of cancer and I'm 27, why could not I? And the illusion is shattered. We prop up the illusion in a million ways. As long as you do the right thing, you'll get blessed somehow, it'll be okay. It's all illusion. So it's not hard to kind of shake that illusion. And so if the economy fell over, who knows? I think the more postmodern we get, we are suckers for another Hitler or some guru who's going to answer everything. And if philosophy had a contribution to us, we would have to go back somewhere where we were giving people the ability to be critical. Because gurus will not lead the way. In fact, most gurus, you need to keep your hands well and truly on your wallet, because that's where they're headed. Most prophets are interested in profits.
There's a really good quote I read on a cafe notice board once. It said, "Don't be so open-minded that your brain falls out." It's such an advice.
It's true. It's true. Like we were saying earlier on, I've been to church meetings where there were punch-ups. Now that's ugly. That's ugly. But it wouldn't happen anymore. Because
Well, it's
nobody...
so proper, and so socially correct, and we're not allowed to say this.
And we've lost our capacity to know.
Yes.
So what we focus on is political correctness. or you can't use that word. And the big issues just kind of start lying. So you know, it's learning again to be kind of critical. I think, you know, if you go way back to the ancients, which is probably a good place to finish, you know, from Greece, where our foundations came, the concept of the word was the greatest gift. The word is logos, which is the ology we read on the end of everything. Logos is not necessarily the word that comes out of the mouth, although that's also connected. But it's that which pulls all the world together to make intelligibility. That's what the word is. Sorry, Chris.
So what's your take on a common struggle creating community here?
That's actually the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry, let's go.
Speaking, first of all, there was no kind of cult of personality really in it with the war was no wars, and then it was no more him. So I'm just trying to understand, so in those intervening 20 years, did we move towards a cult of personality, or was it just that it happens to be by the person that appeared, or did we? There were villains in World War One, and I could be knocking about 4 at least now.
Yeah. Philosophy. Philosophy did play its part in those years. After the First World War, the victors got together and at the Treaty of Versailles more or less carved up the world. And they created borders where borders didn't exist. They just drew lines and said, you can have this, you know, and we'll have that.
And made Germany the
absolutely.
turned it into the angry nation it became.
Had to be. The Second World War was going to come because the Treaty of Versailles was so. And a lot of the territorial fights that we have with us even today come from that carve, even today. I think if you're looking for causes, that would be where I'd start. But philosophy also, you know, Nietzsche's Superman played an active part in Nazi formation, and Heidegger was a Nazi. He was a Nazi, which is why I didn't give you phenomenology last week, just to teach him a lesson. So philosophy did play a part, and you know, people, you know, we all do philosophy. Even fundamentalists, they don't realise this. But if you get this Bible verse, and then you get that Bible verse, the only way you can connect those two is via some kind of philosophy. We all do philosophy. Does that speak to the question? Yeah. Any more? Can I tell you about the next 2 weeks? The next 2 weeks will be a complete break from this. It will challenge you, I hope, deeply. It will challenge your sense of autonomy that has come to you from modernity. For him, for Buber, language does not originate in the self. My word is not something that starts in my brain and comes to my throat and gets spat out. I would never speak unless somebody spoke to me first. So my words are a response. So he will challenge